The morning sun was just starting to peek over the mountains when Jake heard something strange outside his garage. He had been working late again, fixing an old truck that refused to start. Living alone in this small desert town meant he was used to quiet mornings, but today felt different. Jake wiped his hands on his old work shirt and stepped outside. The air was crisp and cool, typical for late autumn in Nevada. He loved these early morning hours when the world was still peaceful and quiet. But as he looked around his property, something caught his eye near the old oak tree behind his garage. Two figures were lying on the ground, barely moving. Jake's heart started beating faster. Were they hurt? He quickly walked over, his boots crunching on the dry leaves scattered across the yard. What he saw next made him stop in his tracks. Two young women were lying there, but something was very wrong. Their skin looked different, almost glowing in the morning light. One had a silver tint to her skin, while the other looked pale blue. Both were wearing strange, torn fabric that looked like nothing he had ever seen before. The taller one had violet eyes that seemed to glow, and the smaller one had golden eyes that sparkled like stars. They looked exhausted, scared, and very cold. Jake had never seen anything like this in his 42 years of life. "Are you okay?" Jake asked gently, kneeling down beside them. The two women looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. They said something in a language he had never heard before. It sounded musical but urgent, like they were trying to ask for help. The taller woman tried to sit up but was too weak. She pointed to herself and said something that sounded like Zara. Then she pointed to the other woman and made a sound like Luna. Jake realized they were telling him their names. "I'm Jake," he said slowly, pointing to himself. Jake. He could see understanding flash in their eyes. They were learning his language incredibly fast. Both women looked hungry and scared. Their strange clothes were torn and dirty, and they were shivering in the cold morning air. Jake made a quick decision. He couldn't leave them here like this, no matter how strange they looked. "Come with me," he said, making gentle gestures with his hands. "Food, water, safe." He pointed toward his garage, which had a small apartment upstairs where he sometimes stayed when working late. Zara and Luna looked at each other, and something strange happened. They seemed to be communicating without speaking, just by looking into each other's eyes. It was like they were having a conversation that Jake couldn't hear. After a moment, they nodded and tried to stand up. Jake helped them, noticing how light they felt, almost like they weighed less than normal people. He led them slowly toward his garage, supporting them as they walked out inside the garage. Jake had a small kitchen area upstairs. He heated some soup and made hot tea, watching as the two women sat close together on his old couch. They were still scared, but seemed to trust him a little more now. When he brought them the food, they looked at it carefully before tasting it. Their reactions were amazing. They smiled for the first time, and Jake could see relief in their eyes. They were clearly very hungry and hadn't eaten in a long time. "Thank you," Zara said in broken English. Her voice was soft and musical. "Thank you, Jake." Luna nodded and repeated, "Thank you, Jake." She was learning to speak just by listening to her companion. Jake found some old clothes that had belonged to his late wife. They were too big, but at least they were warm and clean. He gave the women privacy to change while he waited downstairs. In the garage, when they came back down, they looked more normal, though their unusual skin and eyes still made them stand out. Jake had so many questions, but he could see they were exhausted. "Sleep," he said, pointing upstairs. "Rest, safe here." That night, Jake lay awake thinking about what had happened. He had always been interested in astronomy and had spent many nights looking at the stars through his telescope. He had often wondered if life existed somewhere else in the universe. Now, he was pretty sure it did, and it was sleeping upstairs in his garage. The next morning, Jake woke up early and made breakfast. When Zara and Luna came downstairs, they looked better but still nervous. They sat at his small table and ate quietly, occasionally looking at each other in that strange way they had of communicating. "Where are you from?" Jake asked gently. Zara looked around the garage until she found a piece of paper and a pencil. She started drawing. First, She drew what looked like the night sky with stars. Then she drew something that looked like a planet, but different from Earth. She pointed to the drawing and then to herself and Luna, far away. She said in her improving English, very far away. Luna took the pencil and drew what looked like a spaceship, but then she drew it broken, crashed. She made a sad face and pointed to the drawing. Jake's heart sank. These women weren't just from another country or another continent. They were from another world entirely, and something terrible had happened to bring them here. Over the next few days, Jake learned more about his unusual guests. They were incredibly smart and learned English faster than seemed possible. They helped him in the garage, and he was amazed at how well they understood machines and engines. Even though they had never seen Earth technology before, Zara was the older of the two, and she seemed to be protecting Luna like a big sister. Luna was gentler and more artistic, often drawing pictures of things Jake didn't recognize but were beautiful to look at. The women were careful to stay hidden when anyone came to the garage. Jake told his few customers that his nieces were visiting from out of state. It wasn't entirely a lie. He told himself they were like family now, even though they had only been there for a few days. One evening, while they were eating dinner together, Jake noticed both women looking sad. They were staring out the window at the night sky. "Miss home?" Jake asked quietly. Zara nodded, tears in her violet eyes. "Home gone," she said. "Cannot go back." Luna reached over and took Jake's hand. "You good man," she said. "You save us." Jake felt a warmth in his heart that he hadn't felt since his wife died 3 years ago. These two remarkable women had brought something special into his lonely life. He didn't know what the future would bring, but he knew he would do everything he could to protect them. As they sat together looking at the stars, Jake realized that sometimes the most unexpected things can become the most important. He had found a family in the most impossible place, and he was determined to keep them safe, no matter what challenges lay ahead. That night, as Jake locked up the garage and turned off the lights, he smiled. For the first time in years, his house didn't feel empty. He had a purpose again, and to remarkable women who needed him as much as he needed them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight they were safe, fed, and together. Sometimes that's all that matters. 3 weeks had passed since Jake found Zara and Luna behind his garage. What started as a strange morning had turned into something beautiful. His quiet, lonely life was now filled with laughter, conversation, and the warmth of family. Every morning, Jake would wake up to the smell of something delicious cooking downstairs. The two women had quickly learned to use his kitchen, though they made some interesting combinations of food that he had never tried before. Somehow, everything they cooked tasted amazing. "Jake, come eat," Luna would call from the kitchen, her English getting better every day. It was incredible how fast they learned. In just 3 weeks, they went from knowing no English to speaking like they had lived here for years. During breakfast, Zara would often help Jake plan his work for the day. She had an amazing understanding of machines and engines. Sometimes she would look at a broken car and immediately know what was wrong with it. Jake had been fixing cars for 20 years, but Zara could see problems that took him hours to find. "This part needs cleaning," she would say, pointing to something inside the engine. "And this wire is loose." She was always right. Luna was different but equally amazing. She loved to draw and paint. Jake had bought her art supplies from the town store, and she created the most beautiful pictures he had ever seen. She drew landscapes of places that didn't exist on Earth, with purple skies and suns and floating islands covered in strange, beautiful trees. "Is this your home?" Jake asked one day, looking at one of her paintings. Luna's golden eyes grew sad. "Was home," she said quietly, "before the fire came." Jake didn't push for more details. He could see that talking about their past was painful for both women, but slowly, bit by bit, they began to share their story with him. It started with small things. Zara would sometimes point to his telescope and say things like, "We traveled past that star," or "That constellation looks different from space." Luna would draw pictures of their journey, showing what looked like a beautiful planet being destroyed by some kind of cosmic disaster. One evening, After they had finished dinner, Zara took out a piece of paper and began drawing something more detailed than usual. She drew what looked like a map of the galaxy, with lines connecting different stars. "We came from here," she said, pointing to a star that Jake didn't recognize. "Many of us tried to escape when our world was ending. We got separated during the journey." Luna joined her sister at the table and added to the drawing. She drew several small ships leaving their home planet, but only one making it to Earth. "Others might be here too," Jake asked. "Maybe," Zara said hopefully. "We hope some of our people survived." As the days went by, Jake realized how much he had grown to care for these two remarkable women. They weren't just guests in his house anymore. They were family. He had never had children of his own, but now he felt like a father protecting his daughters. The hardest part was keeping their secret. Jake lived in a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. People were starting to ask questions about his nieces who never seemed to leave his property. One afternoon, Sheriff Williams stopped by the garage. He was a good man and an old friend of Jake's. But Jake's heart started racing when he saw the police car pull up. "Hey, Jake," Sheriff Williams said, stepping out of his car. "How's business?" "Good, good," Jake replied, trying to sound casual. "Just fixing Mrs. Johnson's car today. I heard you have some family visiting," the sheriff said. Looking around the garage, "Your nieces, right?" Jake nodded. "Yeah, they're from back east. Staying with me for a while." "That's nice. You've seemed happier lately. It's good to have family around." Just then, Jake heard a small noise from upstairs. His heart skipped a beat. Zara and Luna were supposed to be hiding, but he could tell they were listening to every word. "Well, I should get going," Sheriff Williams said. "Tell your nieces I said welcome to town." After the sheriff left, Jake went upstairs to find both women looking worried. "Was that about us?" Zara asked. "People are curious," Jake said honestly. "In a small town, everyone notices new faces." Luna looked scared. "Should we leave? We don't want to cause trouble for you." Jake sat down next to them on the couch. "No one is going anywhere," he said firmly. "We're family now. Families stick together." That evening, Jake made a decision. He drove to the next town over and bought contact lenses that would make Zara's and Luna's eyes look more normal. He also bought makeup to help them blend in better. "If we're going to be a family," he said, "we need to make sure you two can go out in public without people asking too many questions." Zara and Luna practiced using the contact lenses and makeup. It was strange seeing them look so normal, but Jake knew it was necessary for their safety. The next day, Jake took them into town for the first time. They walked through the small main street, visiting the grocery store and the library. Luna was fascinated by all the books, while Zara was amazed by the variety of food in the store. "So many choices," Zara whispered as they walked through the grocery aisles. "Wait until you try ice cream," Jake said with a smile. At the ice cream shop, Jake watched as both women tried different flavors. Their faces lit up with joy, and for a moment, they looked like any other young women enjoying a treat with their father. "This is wonderful," Luna said, eating her strawberry ice cream. "Thank you for bringing us here." "Thank you for trusting me," Jake replied, as they walked back to the truck. Jake noticed how naturally Zara and Luna had learned to blend in. They copied the way other people walked and talked. They were natural mimics, adapting to their environment like chameleons. That night, as they sat on the porch looking at the stars, Jake realized how much his life had changed. 3 weeks ago, he was a lonely man going through the motions of life. Now, he had a purpose and a family worth protecting. "Jake," Zara said quietly, "we want you to know something." "What's that?" in our language. "We have a word for someone who saves your life and becomes family. The word is Thalon." "You are a Thalon?" Luna nodded. "On our world, a Thalon is the most important person in your life, more important than blood family." Jake felt tears in his eyes. "You two are my Thalon too," he said. "I didn't know I was missing a family until I found you." As they sat together under the stars, Jake made a silent promise. No matter what challenges lay ahead, he would protect these two remarkable women who had brought so much joy into his life. They had lost their home, their world, and probably many of their loved ones. But they had found something new here with him. Tomorrow would bring new adventures and new challenges. But tonight, they were safe, happy, and together, and that was all that mattered. 2 months had passed since that first morning when Jake found Zara and Luna. Life had settled into a comfortable routine, but Jake could tell something was bothering the two women. They would often stand outside at night, looking up at the stars, with sadness in their eyes. One evening, while they were having dinner, Luna put down her fork and looked at Jake with tears in her golden eyes. "Jake, we need to tell you something," she said quietly. "We think there might be others like us who survived." Zara nodded. "When our ship broke apart in your atmosphere, we saw at least 3 other pieces that looked like they might have made it to the ground safely." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. "Other people from your world, maybe." Zara said, "We've been hoping, but we don't know how to find them." Jake thought about this for a moment. He had always been interested in astronomy, and he had a pretty good telescope in his backyard. Maybe he could help them figure out where the other pieces of their ship might have landed. "Show me where you think you came from," Jake said, leading them outside to his telescope. Under the star-filled desert sky, Zara and Luna took turns looking through the telescope. They pointed to different areas of the sky, describing the path their ship had taken before it broke apart. "We came from that direction," Zara said, pointing toward the mountains. "When the ship started breaking, we saw pieces flying in different directions." Luna added, "There was one piece that looked like it might have had people in it. It went that way." She pointed toward a distant canyon about 50 miles away. Jake studied the landscape in the moonlight. He knew those canyons well. He used to go hiking there with his wife before she passed away. The area was remote and mostly uninhabited, which would be perfect for someone trying to hide. "We could go look," Jake said. "I know those canyons pretty well." The next morning, Jake loaded his truck with camping supplies, food, and water. He also brought his camera and some basic tools, just in case they found something. Zara and Luna were excited but nervous. They hadn't been this far from Jake's house since they arrived. The drive to the canyons took about 2 hours. As they got closer, both women became more alert, looking around carefully at every rock formation and every shadow. "Stop here," Zara said suddenly when they reached a high point overlooking a deep canyon. "I feel something." Jake parked the truck, and they all got out. The desert was quiet except for the wind blowing through the rocks. Luna closed her eyes and stood very still, almost like she was listening to something Jake couldn't hear. "There," she whispered, pointing down into the canyon. "Something metal is down there." They carefully made their way down the rocky slope. It was slow going, but Jake had brought rope and hiking gear to help them navigate the difficult terrain. About halfway down, they found it. Hidden behind a large boulder was a piece of twisted metal that definitely didn't belong on Earth. It was silver and seemed to glow slightly in the sunlight, just like the fabric Zara and Luna had been wearing when Jake first found them. "This is from our ship," Zara said, touching the metal gently. "But this is just a small piece." They searched the area for hours, finding more pieces of debris scattered throughout the canyon. Some pieces were tiny, but others were large enough that people could have been inside them when they crashed. Then Luna made a discovery that changed everything. Behind a cluster of rocks, she found a small device that looked like a crystal attached to some kind of metal framework. "A communication device," she said excitedly. "If it still works, we might be able to contact others." Jake watched as Zara and Luna worked together to examine the device. Their knowledge of their own technology was amazing. Within minutes, they had figured out how to activate it. The device made a soft humming sound and began to glow with a gentle blue light. Then, suddenly, it made a series of beeps and clicks that meant nothing to Jake but caused both women to gasp with excitement. "Someone is answering," Zara whispered. "Someone else is alive." The device continued making sounds for several minutes. Jake could tell that Zara and Luna were having some kind of conversation with whoever was on the other end, though he couldn't understand any of it. Finally, the device went quiet. Both women looked at Jake with tears of joy in their eyes. "There are 3 others," Luna said. an elder named Kef, and two young ones, Mira and Jax. They've been hiding in caves about 20 miles from here. Jake felt a mixture of excitement and worry. He was happy that Zara and Luna had found more of their people, but he was also concerned about what this meant for their safety. Do they need help? He asked. Yes, Zara said. They're scared and hungry. Kef is injured, and the young ones are barely surviving. Jake didn't hesitate. Then we go get them. The next few hours were the most intense of Jake's life. Using the communication device, Zara and Luna guided them to the location where the other survivors were hiding. It was a remote cave system that would have been almost impossible to find without directions. When they finally reached the caves, Jake's heart broke at what he saw. 3 figures emerged from the shadows. Looking thin and frightened, Kef was clearly the oldest, with silver hair and kind eyes that reminded Jake of his own grandfather. Mira and Jax looked like teenagers, scared and exhausted. You found us, Kef said in surprisingly good English. We had almost given up hope. Jake immediately went to work, sharing the food and water he had brought. He also had a first aid kit and was able to help with Kef's injured leg. The old man had been hurt in the crash and hadn't been able to walk properly for weeks. We've been living on dessert plants and whatever water we could find, Mira explained. But we didn't know how to find food that was safe to eat. Jax, who looked to be about Luna's age, stayed close to Kef. We were afraid to leave the caves, he said. We didn't know if there were other humans like you who would help us. As the sun began to set, Jake realized they had a problem. His truck could fit 3 people comfortably, but now there were 6 of them, and more importantly, where would they all stay? We'll figure it out, Jake said, seeing the worry in everyone's eyes. We're family now, all of us. Family takes care of each other. That night, they camped in the desert under the stars. Jake had brought sleeping bags and a portable camp stove, so they were able to have a warm meal and a safe place to rest. As they sat around the small campfire, Jake listened to the 5 survivors share stories of their home world and their journey to Earth. Our planet was beautiful, Kef said, but when the Great Fire came from space, we had only hours to escape. Hundreds of ships tried to leave, but most didn't make it. We were lucky to reach Earth. Mira added, but the journey was so long and dangerous, many of us didn't survive. Jake looked at these 5 remarkable people who had lost everything, but still had hope. He thought about his quiet life just 2 months ago, and how much richer it had become since Zara and Luna entered it. Tomorrow, we go home, he said firmly. All of us, we'll make it work. As they prepared to sleep under the star-filled sky, Jake realized that his definition of family had expanded again. He had gone from being alone to having 2 daughters. And now he had 5 people depending on him. It was overwhelming, but it was also the most important thing he had ever done. Zara came and sat beside him as the others settled in for the night. Thank you, Jake, she said quietly. You've given us more than just safety. You've given us hope. Jake looked up at the stars, thinking about tomorrow's challenges. That's what family does. He said, we give each other hope. Getting 5 people back to Jake's property was harder than he had expected. His small truck was packed tight, with Kef riding in the front seat because of his injured leg, while the 4 younger ones squeezed into the back. The drive home felt longer than usual, with everyone quiet and nervous about what came next. Jake's garage apartment, which had felt cozy with just 3 people, now seemed impossibly small. But somehow, they made it work. Kef took the small bedroom, while Mira and Jax set up sleeping areas in the living room. Zara and Luna insisted on sleeping on the garage floor, so the newcomers could be more comfortable upstairs. This is temporary. Jake assured everyone that first night, we'll figure out something better soon. What Jake didn't know was that their time was running out faster than anyone realized. The next morning, while Jake was making breakfast for 6 people instead of 3, he heard the sound of car doors slamming outside. His heart sank when he looked out the window and saw 2 black SUVs parked in front of his garage. Everyone upstairs, now, Jake whispered urgently. Hide and don't make any noise. The 5 survivors moved quickly and quietly, disappearing up the stairs like shadows. Jake took a deep breath, wiped his hands on his shirt, and walked outside. To meet his unexpected visitors, a woman in a dark suit stepped out of the first SUV. She was tall, professional-looking, and had the kind of serious expression that meant business. Behind her, 3 men in similar suits spread out around Jake's property. "Good morning," the woman said, showing Jake an official-looking badge. "I'm Agent Rivera from a special government task force. We'd like to ask you a few questions." Jake's mouth felt dry, but he tried to stay calm. "Questions about what?" "We're investigating some unusual activity in this area," Agent Rivera said. Looking around the garage, reports of strange lights in the sky. Unusual debris found in the desert. "Have you noticed anything out of the ordinary?" "Not really," Jake said, hoping his voice sounded steady. "I work on cars all day. I don't pay much attention to the sky." Agent Rivera walked closer to the garage, looking at everything carefully. "We also heard you have some family visiting, nieces from out of state." "That's right," Jake said. "They're helping me with the business. We like to meet them," the agent said. It wasn't really a request. Jake's mind raced. "They're not here right now. They went into town for supplies." Agent Rivera nodded slowly, but Jake could tell she didn't believe him. "Mr. Thompson, I'm going to be honest with you. We know there were several crashes in this area about 2 months ago. We found debris that doesn't match any known aircraft. If you're hiding something, it would be better for everyone if you cooperated." Before Jake could answer, one of the other agents called out from behind the garage, "Agent Rivera, you need to see this." Jake's heart stopped. The agent had found something. They all walked to the back of the garage, where the agent was pointing. At the ground near the old oak tree. "These look like impact marks," the agent said. "Something landed here hard, then was dragged toward the building." Agent Rivera looked at Jake with sharp eyes. Still nothing unusual to report. Jake was trying to think of an explanation when he heard a sound that made his blood run cold. From upstairs in the garage came the faint sound of someone coughing. Jax had been fighting a cold since they found him. All four agents immediately looked up toward the sound. "I thought you said your nieces weren't here," Agent Rivera said. I was mistaken," Jake said quickly. "They must have come back while we were talking. We'd like to meet them now," the agent said firmly. Jake knew he was out of options. He had to think fast to protect his family. "Let me go get them," he said. "They're probably getting dressed." Agent Rivera nodded to one of her men, who followed Jake toward the stairs. Jake's mind was racing as he climbed up to the apartment. He had to warn them somehow. At the top of the stairs, Jake called out loudly, "Girls, there are some government people here who want to meet you. You should put on your contact lenses and makeup before coming down." It was a coded message, and he hoped they would understand. The contact lenses and makeup would help them look more normal, but more importantly, it told them that they were in danger. After a few minutes, Zara and Luna came down the stairs, looking as human as possible. They had their colored contact lenses and had used makeup to make their skin look more normal. To a casual observer, they might pass for unusual looking but still human. "These are my nieces," Jake said. "Zara and Luna." Agent Rivera studied both women carefully. "Where are you from originally?" "Eastern Europe," Zara said in perfect English. "We've been traveling for a long time." "Do you have identification?" Jake's heart pounded. They had fake IDs that he had made, but they wouldn't stand up to serious investigation. "Their paperwork is being processed," Jake said. "Immigration issues, you know how it is." Agent Rivera didn't look convinced, but before she could ask more questions, her phone rang. She answered it and walked a few steps away to talk privately. While she was distracted, Luna did something that amazed Jake. She very quietly hummed a soft tune, and somehow, Agent Rivera's phone started making strange static noises. The agent shook the phone and moved further away, trying to get better reception. "We should go," one of the other agents said. "Command wants us at the next location." Agent Rivera finished her call and came back to the group. "We'll be in touch, Mr. Thompson. If you remember anything unusual, or if your family situation changes, please contact us immediately." She handed Jake a business card and walked back toward the SUVs with her team. After the agents left, Jake, Sarah, and Luna went back upstairs where the others were hiding. They know something, Kev said quietly. This won't be the last time they come. What do we do? Mira asked. Fear in her voice. Jake looked at all 5 faces staring at him hopefully. These people had lost everything and were depending on him to keep them safe. The responsibility felt overwhelming, but he knew he couldn't let them down. We need a better plan. Jake said, we can't all stay here much longer. It's not safe, and there's not enough room. Maybe we should leave, Jack suggested. We don't want to put you in danger. No, Jake said firmly, we're family. Families don't abandon each other when things get tough. We just need to be smarter about this. That evening, while they shared a quiet dinner, Jake made a decision that would change all their lives. I have a cousin who lives in Oregon, he said. He has a big farm in a remote area. I think I can trust him to help us. You would leave your home for us? Kev asked. Jake looked around at the 5 remarkable people who had become his family. This isn't just my home anymore, he said. Home is wherever we're all together. Sarah reached over and took Jake's hand. You've already given us so much, and you've given me a family, Jake replied. Something I never thought I'd have again. As they planned their next move, Jake realized that their adventure was far from over. Agent Rivera and her team would be back, probably with more questions and better equipment. But Jake was determined to stay one step ahead of them outside. The desert night was quiet and peaceful, but Jake knew that they're safe. Simple life was about to change dramatically tomorrow. They would start planning their escape to Oregon. It would be dangerous and complicated, but they would face it together, because that's what families do. They protect each other, no matter what the cost. The next morning brought unexpected visitors to Jake's garage, but this time, it wasn't government agents. It was Agent Rivera, alone, and she looked different. Gone was the serious, intimidating expression. Instead, she looked tired and almost friendly. Jake watched nervously from his window as she parked a regular car instead of the black SUV. When she knocked on his door, he took a deep breath and went to meet her. Mr. Thompson, she said quietly, I think we need to talk. Just you and me. Jake stepped outside, closing the door behind him. About what? Agent Rivera looked around to make sure they were alone. About the 5 people you're protecting. Upstairs. Jake's heart stopped. I don't know what you mean. Jake, she said, using his first name for the first time. I've been doing this job for 15 years. I know when someone is hiding something important. More importantly, I know when someone is hiding something for the right reasons. Jake stared at her, not sure what to say. Let me tell you a story, Agent Rivera continued. 3 years ago, I found a young man in the mountains of Colorado. He was scared, alone, and definitely not from around here. Sound familiar? Jake's eyes widened. You've met others. His name is David now, though that wasn't his original name. He's married to a wonderful woman, has a job as an engineer, and just had his first child. A beautiful little girl who's half human and completely perfect. Jake felt his legs getting weak. You're saying? I'm saying that not all government agents are the bad guys, Jake. Some of us believe that when people need help, we should help them, no matter where they come from. Agent Rivera pulled out a folder from her car. I work for a special program that most people don't know about. We help refugees resettle safely, and we protect them from people who might want to hurt them or use them for experiments. Why should I trust you? Jake asked. Because you don't have much choice, she said honestly. My team yesterday found enough evidence to know exactly what's going on here. But instead of reporting it up the chain, I told them it was a false alarm. Jake looked at this woman who could either save his family or destroy them. What do you want? I want to help, she said simply. But we need to move fast. There are other agents coming next week with much more advanced equipment. If they find your family, things won't go well. Just then, the garage door opened and Zara stepped out. She had heard the conversation from inside. Jake, she said, I think we should listen to her. Agent Rivera looked at Zara with kind eyes. You must be one of the daughters Jake told me about yesterday. You're very brave for coming out here. Are you really here to help us? Zara asked directly. I am, Agent Rivera said. But I need all of you to trust me, and we need to move quickly. Over the next hour, Jake called everyone together, and Agent Rivera explained her program. It was like something out of a movie, but it was real. The government had been secretly helping refugees from other worlds for decades. We can give you new identities, help you relocate to a safe place, and make sure you have everything you need to build normal lives, Agent Rivera explained. The only requirement is that you keep the secret. Kev, speaking for the group, asked the question they were all thinking. What about Jake? He's risked everything for us. That's entirely up to Jake, Agent Rivera said. He can stay here and go back to his old life, or he can come with you to your new location. The choice is his. Jake looked around at the 5 faces that had become his whole world. Zara and Luna, who had brought joy back into his life. Kev, whose wisdom reminded him of his own grandfather. Mira and Jax, who felt like the children he never had. There's no choice to make. Jake said, we're a family. Families stay together. Agent Rivera smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Agent Rivera brought specialists who helped create perfect new identities for everyone. Jake became Jake Wilson instead of Jake Thompson. The others got completely new names and backgrounds that would stand up to any investigation. They also received help learning how to blend in even better. Special makeup that would permanently alter Zara's and Luna's skin tone. Advanced contact lenses that would never need to be removed. Even minor medical procedures to help their unique features look more human. It's not that you need to hide who you are, the specialist explained. It's that you need to be safe in a world that isn't ready to understand you yet. On their last night in Jake's old garage, the 6 of them sat together sharing stories and making plans for their new life. Where will we go? Luna asked. Oregon, Agent Rivera had told them. There's a small town called Pine Valley. It's quiet, safe, and perfect for a family that wants to start over. What will we do there? Mira wondered. Jake smiled. I'll open a new garage. Zara can help me run it, and maybe go to college to study engineering. Luna can pursue her art. Kev can retire and enjoy his garden. And you and Jax can finish school and figure out what you want to do with your lives. It sounds perfect, Jax said. It sounds like home, Kev added quietly. The move to Oregon took 3 days. Agent Rivera arranged everything, including a moving truck for Jake's tools and a few precious belongings. The rest he left behind without regret. Pine Valley turned out to be even more beautiful than they had imagined. Rolling green hills, tall pine trees, and a main street that looked like something from a postcard. Jake's new garage was twice the size of his old one, with a big house next door that had enough bedrooms for everyone. Welcome to your new home, Agent Rivera said as she handed Jake the keys. 6 months later, Jake stood in his new garage, watching Zara help a customer with their car troubles. She was enrolled in engineering classes at the local college and was already the best mechanic in 3 counties. Luna had set up an art studio in the back room and was teaching art classes to local children. Her paintings of imaginary landscapes were becoming popular with tourists who visited Pine Valley. Kev had created the most beautiful garden anyone in town had ever seen. People came from miles around just to see his unusual flowers and vegetables that somehow grew bigger and more colorful than anyone else's. Mira and Jax were excelling in their new high school. Mira wanted to become a doctor, while Jax was interested in computer programming. Both were popular with their classmates and had completely normal teenage lives. Jake, Zara said, coming over to where he was standing. Mrs. Chen wants to know if you can look at her car tomorrow. Of course, Jake said. Tell her to bring it by in the morning. As the day ended and they all gathered for dinner in their big new kitchen, Jake looked around at his family and felt completely content. They had traveled across the galaxy, survived a planetary disaster, escaped government pursuit, and found a new home in a place they never could have imagined. You know what I realized today, Luna said as they sat around the dinner table. What's that? Jake asked. Home isn't a planet or a building or even a town, she said. Home is sitting around a table with the people you love, sharing food and stories and planning for tomorrow. Kef nodded wisely. On our old world, we had a saying, the stars may guide your journey, but love creates your destination. Jake raised his glass of water. To family, he said, the kind you choose and the kind that chooses you, to family. They all said together. Outside, the Oregon rain was falling gently on their new town. Inside, 6 people from 2 different worlds were home at last, proving that the strongest bonds in the universe aren't made of blood or even species, but of love, trust, and the willingness to protect each other no matter what challenges come their way. The stars outside sparkled through the window, and Jake knew that somewhere up there, other families might be searching for their own safe harbor. But tonight, his family was complete, safe, and exactly where they belonged.